Hello, friends, and welcome back. Let's talk about Travels with a Donkey in Cevennes today. Travels with a Donkey in Cevennes describes Stevenson's long walking trip in the Cevennes, in the south central France. The Cevennes is a cultural region and range of mountains in south central France. It is in geographical, natural, and cultural significance. Some portions of the region are protected within the Cevennes National Park and Cevennes Biosphere Reserve. It is an agriculturally rich area, but it is not a suitable location for cities. It is a wide diversity of pastoral systems. Stevenson begins his hiking travel to Cevennes. He thinks that there should be something to assist him. Therefore, he buys a donkey to carry his luggage. The name of the donkey is Modestine. The narrative largely focuses on Stevenson's humorous description of its stubborn travel companion, Modestine. Stevenson bought Modestine to carry his belongings for the journey, but Modestine walks very slowly. Stevenson describes his walking along with the donkey in the following words. The donkey kept hanging on each foot for an incredible length of time. In 5 minutes, it exhausted the spirit and set up a fever in all the muscles of the leg. And yet I had to keep close at hand and measure my advance exactly upon hers. For if I dropped a few yards into the rear, or went a few yards ahead, Modestine came instantly to a halt and began to browse. In an inland voyage, Stevenson is mistaken several times by the people. They consider him a peddler. During his travels, he often sleeps under the stars in a special sleeping sack made for him. Stevenson dreams of his romance with a woman. The woman later becomes his wife. The name of the woman is Fanny Van de Grift Osborne. Stevenson writes, "To live out of doors with the woman a man loves is of all lives the most complete and free." In his travels, Stevenson visits the monastery Lady of the Snows, where a country parish priest and an old soldier are horrified to find that Stevenson is a heretic. Stevenson also makes observations about French life, religion, and politics throughout the work. When Stevenson discovers that Modestine is unfit for the travel, he decides to sell her, but suddenly realizes how much he will miss her. He writes, "For 12 days we had been fast companions. We had traveled upwards of 120 miles, crossed several respectable ridges, and jogged along with our 6 legs by many a rocky and many a boggy by road. After the first day, although sometimes I was hurt and distant in manner, I still kept my patience. And as for her, poor soul, she had come to regard me as a god. She loved to eat out of my hand. She was patient, elegant in form, the color of an ideal mouse, and inimitably small. Her faults were those of her race and sex. Her virtues were her own. Farewell, and Eve forever." Father Adam wept when he sold her to me. After I had sold her in my turn, I was tempted to follow his example, and being alone with a stage driver and 4 or 5 agreeable young men, I did not hesitate to yield to my emotion. See, Travels with a Donkey in the Cevennes, published in 1879, is one of the Robert Louis Stevenson's earliest published works. It recounts the hiking journey he made in the autumn of 1878 through the Cevennes, a mountain range and a cultural region in southeast France, his sole companion being a female donkey named Modestine. His trek lasted 12 days and spanned a distance of some 120 miles, that is 193 kilometers. The reason behind his undertaking this journey is stated by Stevenson in the following words. "For my part, I travel not to go anywhere, but to go. I travel for travel's sake. The great affair is to move, to feel the needs and hitches of our life more clearly, to come down off this feather bed of civilization and find the globe granite underfoot and strewn with cutting flints. Alas, as we get up in life and are more preoccupied with our affairs, even a holiday is a thing that must be worked for. To hold a pack upon a pack saddle against a gale out of freezing north is no high industry, but it is one that serves to occupy and compose the mind. And when the present is so exacting, who can annoy himself about the future?" Stevenson started this journey on September 22, 1878, from the highland town of Les Monestiers in the Reign of Valais, where he had spent a good while acquiring supplies and making other necessary preparations, and where he had purchased Modestine to be his best of the burden. From Les Monastiers, Stevenson travelled southwards, from Valais and hence through the reign of Govendon. He made his way along the mountains countryside, passing by beautiful scenes of pastoral life and through hamlets, villages, and little towns, and all the while engaging and interacting with the folk of French and rural highlands. Initially, Stevenson's journey was fraught with mishaps and misfortunes, and he spent a great deal of time and effort seeking to master the stubborn Modestine. Stevenson spent nights in inns wherever he found them and whenever he reached them. But at one point, when he was refused aid and accommodation in Fauzillac, he was forced to pass the night camping among the birches and beeches on the wayside. He writes, I've been after an adventure all my life, a pure dispassionate adventure, such as befell early and heroic voyages, and thus to be found by morning in the random woodside nook in Govardhan. Not knowing north from south, as strange to my surroundings as the first man upon the earth, an inland castaway, was to find a fraction of my daydreams realized. On September 26, 1878, Stevenson reached the Trappist monastery of Lady of the Snows, where he was admitted by the monks. There, he gained an insight into the life and philosophy of the monks, to which he devoted much time musing upon. There also he shared the company of two fellow boarders, a country parish priest and an old soldier, with whom he discussed politics and religion. Both of them tried to convert him into Catholics, but it was an unsuccessful attempt on their part. Stevenson left the monastery and set out south once more, with faithful Modestine alongside him. The night of September 28, 1878, found him attempting to scale a portion of Lozère in the region of Mont Lozère, but when darkness closed fast around him, he resolved to make his camp among the pines and spent a night under the stars. Embosomed in nature, Stevenson passed in peace, solitude, and contentment, remarking thus, I have not often enjoyed a more serene possession of my life, nor felt more independent of material aids. The outer world, from which we cower into our houses, seemed after all a gentle, habitable place, and might after night a man's bed, it seemed, was laid and waiting for him in the fields, where God keeps an open house. I thought I had discovered one of those truths which are revealed to the savages and hid from the political economists. At the least, I had discovered a new pleasure for my life. On September 29, 1878, Stevenson finally crossed into the country of the Camisards. It is a region steeped in rich history. It was there that the cruel war was waged, when the Protestants of Cevennes rose in revolt against the Catholic monarchy to defend their religious freedom. From 1702 to 1704, several thousand Camisards fought against tens of thousands of royal troops, and it was not until many years later that a political solution was reached and an end to the hostilities declared. The Camisards' war was long over when Stevenson arrived, yet its grim and bloody memory was kept alive by the folk of the region, and though he found Protestants and Catholics living side by side in peace, still each community kept to their own traditions and to their own versions of history. Both sides agreed, however, that it was a bad idea for a man to change. That is, it was bad for a man to change its religion. Stevenson himself was well versed in the history of Cevennes, and wherever he passed, he evoked vivid, dramatic scenes from the history of the places where he went. He also discussed the famed figures of the Camisards' war. In the final stages of his trek, Stevenson passed into nights camping in the open, once in the valley of Tarn and once in the valley of Memmente, and the rest at inns wherever he found them. Stevenson would have carried on to allies with Modestine, but on the morning of October 3, 1878, the Saint Jean Dugard, an ostler, pronounced the female donkey unfit for further travel and in need of rest for at least 2 days. Stevenson decided to continue his journey to Alais by stagecoach. He sold Modestine and finally parted with her, but not without difficulty, for though he found her stubborn and ungovernable at the beginning of the journey, he had now come to love her in the end. He describes his parting as, for 12 days we had been fast companions. We had travelled upwards of the 120 miles, crossed several respectable ridges, and jogged along with our 6 legs by many a rocky and many a boggy by road. After the first day, although sometimes I was hurt and distant in manner, I still kept my patience, and as for her, poor soul, she had come to regard me as a god. She loved to eat out of my hand. She was patient, elegant in form, the color of an ideal mouse, and inimitably small. Her faults were those of her race and sex, her virtues were her own. Farewell, and if forever. Travels with a donkey in the Cevennes ends here, on the point where the Modestine is sold. The title of the last chapter is Farewell, Modestine. The book is written in the form of a travelogue. A traveler is the record of writer's personal journey. Stevenson records his observations of Cevennes mountains. Stevenson has been a devoted observer of the people and places. The travelogue also deals with Stevenson's love for valleys, rocks, hills, rivers, stars, pine trees, the castles, the villages, the monasteries, and the Cevennes culture. He also comments on religious aspect of Cevennes people. The religious war between the two sects of Catholics and Protestants is also witnessed by Stevenson. He finds during his journey that both the Catholics and the Protestants are living in harmony and peace. Thus, Stevenson has given record of most of the things in the area of Cevennes. I hope you have understood Travels with a Donkey in the Cevennes. Thank you very much for watching.